On this episode of Mighty Car Mods, what is in this box is going in that car.
Which will make it the most powerful and the fastest Levorg on the planet. Welcome to another episode of Mighty Car Mods. Now, if you have got yourself a Subaru Levorg,
you're a legend.
The only thing that you need to make your car absolutely incredible is a 2.5 litre EJ out of a Subaru WRX STI with a couple of mods. There it is. That's all you need. End of the episode. Thanks for watching. Buy some merch.
A good friend of mine once said that EJs were really good back in 1992, and that's when they should have finished them and done something better, like...
Go on.
EZ30 people, and not just any EZ30, a fully built EZ30 made for making some serious power, the most powerful engine that I personally have ever owned for a Subaru ever. The EZ36 that's in Supergrams is incredible. That's a stock motor. This one has all the gear, which you would have seen in the last episode where we went to New Zealand and got this thing made. So I'm pretty excited about transplanting this thing into that thing. Never been done before that we know of. Fairly confident it will work. And we've got some special guests along to help us get it done.
It's an absolutely huge project, a massive process to get organised and get started. Lots and lots of backwards and forwards with lots of different people, Martin. It's a bit of a party time to actually work out exactly how to do it. But we do have some very special guests that we're going to introduce to you right now. They're going to help make Martin's dream become a reality.
To most of you, this fella isn't going to need much of an introduction. Al, who I've known for 20 years, is one of the most talented car guys I think I've ever met. I've learned much of what I know about making stuff from spending time with him. And this is Woody, who along with Al, runs the skid factory and also happens to be a qualified mechanic. Benny is my oldest Subaru friend. He runs Benny's Custom Works and has helped us with our car-related shenanigans for over a decade now, helping with parts, mods, and just generally being a great bloke. It's so awesome to be in the same room again after years of restrictions and closed borders, so we're all pretty keen to get stuck into this next big build.
So Al, thank you very much for coming down. It's awesome to have you and Woody here from the skid factory. Marty enjoyed driving around the grovel with this engine conversion for a total of about 2 weeks. He wants more power, he's going to get more power, but what are the most challenging kind of aspects of a conversion like this?
Well, obviously the six-cylinder is slightly larger. It's actually not that much longer than the EJ engine. They specifically designed it for that purpose, but it is a little bit bigger. So obviously we've got fan space, radiator space. That's all doable. I suppose the biggest thing is we don't actually know where we're going to put the turbo yet. Obviously a non-turbo engine's not cool, so it has to have a turbo. So we just got to stick the engine in and decide where to put it.
Yeah.
There's a few options, but we're sort of going to go for the most practical option rather than the cool option, I think. But we'll see. Once this thing's out and in the skip, then we'll have space to put the engine in and take stock, figure it out. But really, I think probably the challenging thing might be the wiring. But luckily, that's Dave's problem.
Yeah, okay.
Not so much wiring it, but making it
talk to everything, right?
Chat to the dash and.
So I understand when this one's coming out that it's going in the bin. So I was thinking of maybe keeping this for something. And so I did have a question for you.
You got a question, do you?
I've just got a little question. Do you mind if I ask you a question?
Let's get it over with so we can move on.
Do you think this would fit a Honda?
I think it would. They would both fit in the skip bin.
All right, let's pull this out, throw it in the bin with the collection of Honda Civics. We've got like 4 Honda Civics now. Sorry for the spoiler, there's too many of them, but they just are. Sorry, Martin, I've just told everyone there's too many Civics here. In the bin, on the hoist, in the car, skids. Let's go.
One of my favourite things to do is destroy Subarus, so I've volunteered to help rip Marty's car to bits, and I will rip it apart again with one of my Nissans once it's finished. There's quite a bit of Subaru experience in the room, so this is all going to happen pretty fast. We have to drop the fluids, remove the exhaust, and then take off any wiring, and then this whole EJ can be dumped in the bin. We're taking the wheels off as well because we need to pop the drive shafts to get access to the bell housing bolts. But aside from that, the rest of the drivetrain stays in place, which will save us heaps of time. so Mighty Car Mod's guard covers will prevent scratches on Marty's freshly detailed paint. Unlike when we engine swapped the Levorg only a few weeks back, this time we're pulling the motor out from the top instead of the bottom. The mess of wiring, hoses and random Subaru parts can come out of the engine bay. Yes, that's the stuff we literally just put in, and the motor is just about ready to get yanked out.
Everyone, Benny's here from Benny's Custom Works, and he's offered to help too. It's pretty much just everyone, just all hanging out. We're having an excellent time, by the way. We're allowed to do it because for years we weren't. This was supposed to happen a long time ago, but we couldn't because the borders were shut. Now they're open, good times.
Kind of this.
Kind of is. Benny, have you pulled a Subaru motor out of a Subaru before? Never. Okay,
No,
so
they're super reliable and they always have the original engine than when people buy them.
So assuming that you had to pull one out, what would you do now?
Lift it out.
We're going to
it's ready to go.
Because gearbox is staying, correct?
Yeah, because that six speeds are pretty much as good as you're going to get.
Yeah.
These are like the pinnacle 6-speed, I guess. It's got all the good carbon synchros in it.
Yep.
DCCD, and it's probably got pretty low Ks on it.
Yeah.
What was the wreck, like 100,000 Ks or something?
Not even 45, 48,000
Yeah, mad.
Ks.
We'll break that in no time.
Clutch while it's out?
Yeah, definitely do a clutch, because the 6-speed clutch that's in this is probably pretty basic. Did you guys do a clutch on it before? Oh yeah, no brainer. So we'll probably put a extreme twin plate in it, I guess.
Mad.
Something pretty beefy, because it's going to make, well, it's not going to make tons and tons and tons and tons of power. It's going to make a lot of torque.
Yes.
So the clutch killer will be the torque, not necessarily the killer waspage.
Yep.
Yeah, I reckon we'd pretty much lift it out, put on a stand, and then never speak of EJs ever again. Especially 2.5 ones, because they're horrible.
Deal.
Fight me in the comments.
See you for the 2-litre in the 2-door.
Love it. All about the 2-litre.
The reasonably fresh bolts make pulling this thing apart a breeze. Although Subaru engine bays are pretty messy, access is good for just about everything, except spark plugs and maybe head gaskets.
Woody, how long since you pulled a Subaru engine out of something?
Well, dude, the last time I worked on Subarus was probably 2015, maybe, I think. Yeah, I don't know.
Didn't you work in a mechanic
Working
shop?
for Subaru, yeah.
You worked for
yeah.
Subaru?
Actually, yeah, Gus's car without would have been the last time.
Oh, the last H6 thing.
But I would have been on the filming duties, so not much spanner spinning and more camera holding.
I think it's time for it just to be released, man. I want this EJ-ness gone. So can we just take it?
Safety belt.
That's safety
How long
belt.
since you pulled a Subaru engine out? Like 3,000 kilometres ago?
Yeah, isn't it? Not even 2 tanks of fuel. So about 1.5 tanks of fuel ago, when we did the conversion, we pulled the engine, put the engine in from underneath with the gearbox still attached on the subframe. Why are we pulling it out the top? Because all the rest of the driveline gets to stay in place, which is great. So we don't have to pull out tail shafts, don't have to pull out diffs, don't have to pull out any of that stuff. Gearboxes, none of it. It all bolts up. It's like Subaru meant it to be, but never did it. Sound familiar?
So the EJ is out, ready to go either in the bin or in Al's new Civic project, because it does fit, apparently, even though he thinks it'll be a disastrous idea. So straight in the bin, Martin.
Straight in the bin. The bin that is Marketplace. And then we can now set about fitting the built engine into there, which actually should be pretty simple.
Yep.
Fitting it, now we've got to make everything. That's where it slows down. So we got this out in, what, an hour and a bit?
Yeah.
Because we're hanging out, but I reckon it'll slow down once we start fabricating.
The idea of putting the new engine in there now, even though it isn't complete, is actually just trying to work out the architecture of where everything's going to go. It's like Sim City of cars, isn't
Exactly.
it? You work out where to... Oh, the farm, you've been doing the farming simulator, haven't you?
Except your music is arguably better than the stuff that SimCity puts on repeat over and over and over and over and over again.
This guy. He's all right. You can stay. That's nice, Martin. Thank you. Let's put it in.
Holy clutch bushfire, Batman.
Yeah, that was racing the other Levorg, but it felt worth it at the time.
You still won.
I did
So
win.
that's all that matters.
But this
I
is,
saw that go down.
I mean, this also had 45,000 Ks of someone who owns an STI driving it, right?
Yeah, and someone who crashes an STI driving it.
Whoa.
It's hot.
Few heat spots.
It's almost like they're not designed to handle the power that you made as well.
It's almost like this is going directly in the bin.
in the scrap metal bin.
So we're being a little bit hard on EJ25s. They're actually pretty good, and you can't deny how many of them are out there that are making good power. The engine is so new that it will stay on the shelf and hopefully end up in another project one day. But for now, we need the engine crane to lift our built H6 out of the crate it came over from New Zealand in and prep it to go into the Levorg.
All right, this is the first time this engine has seen the light of day for a little while, since it spent its time over in New Zealand. It's very exciting. So we're going to lift this up, stick a clutch on it, and get it into the car so that we can mock up where everything else goes. I don't think it'll come out again, hopefully, but if it does, it does. Let's see.
Since we saw it last, the engine was started and run on an engine dyno to make sure it all works properly. It's had fluids changed, but we'll do that again for our own running procedure once it's working.
So EZ30 here, if you watched the last video, you would have seen it being built completely from scratch with CNC, closed decking, all that kind of cool stuff. Alan, EZ30, this is not your first EZ30 game. You've also turboed one of these before, correct?
I've turboed lots of them,
Lots
actually. Yeah. They are excellent engines.
Excellent engines. And so in terms of wiring loom and triggering, what do you see?
So this is just a sub loom that they all have. It's out of a Gen 4 Liberty, so 2000s model, because all this stuff's on this side.
Yep.
When we turbo them, if you put the turbo up here, you normally have to unpick all this stuff and shove it over here so it doesn't get melted.
And on the Levorg, it's over here as well.
Yeah, on anything later on, after like late 2000s, this stuff's over here. So we'll probably, I mean, in this case, we could probably just wire it straight to the engine.
So make a new loom, essentially?
Yeah,
easier?
Probably the better way of doing it.
Because there's not that much going on. I can see coils, injectors, AVCS, knock sensor on both sides, and then some, is that crank angle sensor here?
Yep.
And then cam sensor there?
Yeah, and just a solenoid to switch the cams to high.
Yeah.
Because they've got like a VTEC-y sort of arrangement.
Yeah.
So it's pretty simple by modern standards.
And then up the front you'll have air conditioning and oil pump for the power steering. What else?
Alternator and power steering, yep.
So there's not much going on, and you can see it all. And even when it's in the car, we'll still be able to get to all this, eh?
Yeah, it's a breath of fresh air compared to a turbo EJ that's stuffed with things.
Absolutely.
So
let's put a clutch on it and get it ready to go.
Marty's just pulled the Extreme twin plate out of the box for me. We've got this pretty much all set out here, so nice. This one's pretty much based on an OE style diaphragm. Obviously we've got 2 plates in it, being a twin plate. We've just got a solid center organic setup for this particular one. And a nice touch with this one as well is we've got the chromoly light and flywheel here as well. So although there's obviously a lot more mass in a twin plate, the light and flywheel will offset a lot of that. So I'd imagine weight for weight between this and the OEM setup is probably not much different. So yeah, I think this will be a pretty nice little addition. And being that it is an organic, it'll still be pretty nice to drive on the street.
We put a clutch much like this in my two-door STI. It's overkill for stock power, but this H6 should be making well into the high 300 kilowatts at a minimum and close to 500 kilowatts depending on how much boost and timing it will handle. The plates are stacked together and then the pressure plate is installed the same way as any other clutch. Pretty straightforward with the engine out of the car.
These are my heavy-duty engine mounts that have actually come from Russia, believe it or not, from a guy called Keen Engine Mounts, and he powder coats them custom depending on what you're doing to whatever colour you want. I said yellow like the brakes, please. I don't think it's exactly the same, but you don't often see the brakes and the engine mounts in the same field of vision, do you? So that's what we've got, which is a heavy-duty one that replaces these. These are fine. You'll rip through them eventually. You're making big power. We're going to introduce a little bit of noise, vibration and harshness, but it also means the engine isn't rocking around, breaking other stuff. All right, the H6 is going in for the first time. It might go in and out more than once. That's okay, because we actually need to work out clearances. So we've got to think about turbo drains, we've got to think about breathers, we've got to think about all that sort of stuff. But now it's going in for the first time, so let's do it. Oh, this is exciting. Look at that. Look at that. That's just next level now. Like, look at that.
The engine fits perfectly. The only issue we've run into is some residual engine dyno water stuck in the hoses, which we'll replace and will give the engine a proper flush before we run it in. Now it's time to look at plumbing our fuel system, and I know just the guy to help.
So this is known as the Benny Bible of getting all the fittings and parts we need. So go for it, mate.
RWF-412-06.
Wait, def dash Wait, when's the dash go?
There and then
412 dash
06
06
dash 05.
dash 05.
BK.
Oh wait, you mean the one before had a 05 as well with a dash? I said you have to tell me when the dashes are, dude.
No, it doesn't matter.
It does matter.
There's no dash
What's
after.
What's the actual number say? I have to get it right. Because what if
Jamie's
they send
smart though,
what if
bro.
they send the wrong stuff?
Jamie won't.
Right, we've hit that stage where everything slows down a little bit because it's now custom, it's now freestyle, it's now working out. It's using Alan, Woody and Benny's brains and just sort of figuring things out based on their past experiences of where things can go. We're going to try and see if we can bash in the original radiator. It's leaking, where's it leaking from? Bash in the original radiator and see if we're anywhere close to fitting, which it looks like. It looks like it will, but fans might have to come off to get in. And then because this is an alloy radiator, we might be able to add another outlet here or potentially use a different radiator. I've got a couple we can try to see what's going to work. So lots of small custom fiddly bits. And this has to happen before the oil cooler can happen, and then that's before the manifolds can happen. And we don't have those parts because someone signed for them and they're missing. So
This is the point where the build differs from the bolt-on affair we've had so far. There's often debate about which is better between custom and bolt-on, and I'm still not sure, but what I do know is custom takes ages. In a way, by buying parts with their R&D time already done, you're shortcutting that part of modifying, but it will often cost you. However, when you're pushing power limits, everything costs, including buying 2 different radiators just to make one of them work, which we reckon we can do. The key to this thing making power is the turbo. It's a pulsar turbo with dual ball bearings, billet compressor and Iconel turbine. It uses V-bands on the housing and it's commonly known as a 6262G.
H6 is mounted, which is pretty unreal. The thermofans just fit, well one does, and we'll have to go aftermarket for the other side, which is a reasonably good compromise, I think. So now we're going to look at turbos. There's lots of stuff missing because until we had it in the car, we didn't know what we did and didn't need, but a lot of that stuff has started sort of floating in, so we should see it today, tomorrow and the next day. And then now we can look at placing turbo things. So can you tell me a bit about these?
So these are cast iron exhaust manifolds. We actually sort of designed these years ago now, originally to take mirror image like G25 turbos.
So just hang a turbo directly off
So
the bottom.
yeah, one of them scrolls that way and the other one scrolls the other way. But
That's cool.
you could actually just use them as a really simple way of doing turbo manifolds on these instead, because you can just V-band them straight on there. It's turbo, so it doesn't need fancy long
Banana manifolds.
manifolds.
We have done them before.
Unless you just want to do banana manifolds because
If you
you
like
love
bananas, do your bananas. We're not going to do that today. These are nice and low profile too, which is cool.
it. You don't really need it, so this we just V-band onto some stainless steel, merge them and go up through the up pipe hole where the original bit was.
So the plan is, the covers were on here when the engine was shipped, so we're going to take them off, fit that up, and just sort of see where that lets us go, right, in terms of feeding the turbo and then dumping out of it again.
Yep.
So Al, we're over at the lathe, one of your favourite pieces of machinery, to lathe some metal, to chop it down, to make it fit.
Yes.
Oh, what's
That's what
happening
we're
over
doing.
here, mate?
So these manifolds were originally made to house one turbo basically hanging off each manifold on the 2 sides of the engine.
Yep.
But we're not using them for that. We're just using them to make it easier to merge 3 into 1. So this flange here, that's meant to clamp onto the bottom of the turbo, and so is this.
Yes.
So what we're doing is making this into a mating flange for that. So we're just going to take off that male edge there
Yep.
and just turn a female edge into it. Then it'll fit on there nice and snug, V-band. Then we can just start welding pipes to it.
Yep.
So by using these, we're taking out that complexity of making a 3 into 1 on either side
Yes.
sort of header system, which is really time consuming, and you just don't need it on a turbo application.
Because ultimately we're going actually 6 down to 1, right? Like
Yeah.
these two are going to be like meeting in the middle, then going into
Yeah.
the turbo. So kind of a single turbo conversion
Yeah.
at the same time.
We have a pretty big job in front of us. We have to create a full turbo manifold setup for this car, completely from scratch. It's a huge job that Al is undertaking, and I'm super grateful he's offered his skills to this project. Next episode, we're going to start on the fuel system, cooling system, and other supporting parts to help get the turbo installed and get the Levorg closer to fulfilling my built engine 0.5 megawatt wagon dreams.